When our first child was born, the midwife placed him gently on my chest and said, "You've had a baby boy." My husband dropped to his knees beside me, took a moment to gather himself, and then rose up to meet our son. I'll always remember the pride I felt when we told the midwife his name, Xavier. I'll always remember the warmth and weight of his little body against mine. And etched deep into my soul is the sound from the birthing suite that day. Silence. Our son didn't cry. There was no breath. Xavier was stillborn. But he was still ours, and we were his. So we did what parents of any living baby would do. We held him, breathed him in, and took family photos. The love was instant and overwhelming, as was the grief and despair. There were moments I felt like my soul was roaring inside of me, just looking for a way out. We aren't built to be quiet in moments like that. We're meant to wail and scream and cry and shout. But I didn't. I politely shed my tears and then followed them up with an apology. Since our son died, I've done that repeatedly, cry, then apologise. Such a common thing people do, but what are we even apologising for? We haven't done anything wrong. Grief and tears aren't inherently bad. They do make people uncomfortable. Perhaps we're apologising for that. I'm saying sorry because I know a conversation about my stillborn son for me is a rich one about motherhood, pride, love, and yes, pain and sadness. But for the other, it's a conversation about death and grief, and that is wildly uncomfortable for 3 reasons. Number 1, the subject of death confronts us with our own mortality and that of those we love. We don't like to think about that. It hurts too much. Number 2, real raw grief is completely pure. It's the flip side of real love. There's something about a person in a state of such purity that scares us a little. We can see they're stripped bare, mask has come off, guard is down. They have an air about them that says, I have no room for bullshit, which is challenging because our day-to-day interactions are filled with bullshit. It's a social contract we have, the one where we all pretend like we aren't walking around with broken hearts and trauma stories and insecurities. When we see the bereaved stripped bare, we know we're out of social contract and we're not sure what to do with that. Number 3, fear of saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, and causing more pain. I get it. Prior to my own dance with grief, I have turned away, closed conversations, and not started them when I should have. I told myself I was staying quiet for the benefit of the grieving person, but it goes way deeper than that. Yes, we don't want to hurt anyone, but we also don't want to be hurt ourselves. It's one of our basic survival needs to belong to community, and we know if we mess up, we might get cast out of the group. We care, it's just that we care more about our own emotional safety. It feels like a risk to reach out, so we weigh up the odds and choose comfort instead, which feels icky. We're holding empathy for someone, yet it's trapped inside us. Yes, out of fear, but also because we don't have the language to release it. We are products of a grief-illiterate society. So what do we do about that? Well, we need a new social contract with new words. But the hard part is they can't be given. They have to be received from your own heart while in connection with another's. And how does that happen? It's about slowing down, getting quiet, and listening. It's noticing if you're gripping your own heart so tightly in order to protect it that nothing can get in or out, and then loosening that grip to hold your heart gently so that you have space to reach out and hold someone else's. We need to recognize if someone is opening a door and inviting us in to a conversation about their loved one who died. Our job is to walk through that door, not close it. Ask their loved one's name. Ask what they were like. Ask what they miss most about their person. Even if it's a newborn baby, they'll have an answer. We need to practice discomfort often. We need to be willing to take a risk, get things wrong, then try again. And we need to do this collectively in recognition that we are all scared and self-protecting and totally winging it. I'll share an example of someone who was probably uncomfortable with an open display of my grief, yet took a risk and stepped into that space. I was at work when a huge wave of grief washed over me and I could not stop crying. We're on the 11th floor in the CBD, so I didn't want to take the risk of going down the lift and bumping into a lot of people. Instead, I took myself to a far corner of the office kitchen and uncontrollably cried. When my colleague approached me, I apologized and told him I couldn't stop crying and I didn't know what to do. His response was, "Would you like me to just sit beside you so that no one else comes over here?" I said yes. So he just sat next to me until I slowly calmed down and my tears were complete. He then stood up and walked to the toaster. "Would you like some Vegemite toast?" he asked. "Yes, please." I've never forgotten that. It's a reminder to me that holding a grieving heart really can be that simple, which is not to be confused with easy. These conversations are hard, grief is messy, and humans are flawed. But if we wait until we have the courage to do this perfectly, we might never do it. People aren't even looking for perfection, they're looking for connection. Stepping into this space is similar to learning any other new skill. You try, potentially get it a bit wrong, then you dust yourself off and you try again. It's about showing up. It's about consistency. That's how you practice discomfort. And when things get really uncomfortable and the urge to turn away becomes greater than the urge to stay, you practice self-compassion. You remind yourself that this feels really hard because it is really hard. It's also worth it. So in a conversation on death and grief, instead of trying to avoid saying the wrong thing, consider yourself as reaching for beauty, mining for moments, stretching for connection. The real subject isn't death anyway. The real subject is love.